And welcome to North Dakota Legislative Review. I'm Dave Thompson. Thanks for joining us today. The legislature is in its first full week now, after having the first week with a lot of speechifying from people like the governor and the Chief Justice, and of course the State of the Relationship Address. Now lawmakers are getting into the legislation of what's going on and some of the issues that are going to be talked about during this session. And here to join us as our first guest in this 2011 session is the House Majority Leader, Al Carlson of Fargo.
Well, thanks for having me again, Dave.
Well, glad to have you here. You're going to be, of course, one of the point people in how this session's going to unfold.
So, there's no question it's going to be an exciting session.
Why do you say it's exciting? What do you think is going to be kind of the tone of the session?
Well, you know, every problem that we have is really a good problem. We're the envy of the nation. We've got cash reserves. We've got a growing economy. Our individuals, the citizens of this state, their salaries are on the increase. We've got a quality education system. We are really doing well. We have some infrastructure problems. We have some communities that need some flood diversion. But those are problems we can handle. And we're fortunate enough to be able to have some revenue to deal with those things.
North Dakota is one of few states, and maybe the only state, with a decent surplus.
Yeah, absolutely, and I would like to say that it was because of good government and good management of the resources. Some people say, well, God just gave you oil. But oil is just one part of our revenue picture, and we must never become so dependent on that we create a problem for ourselves as a state. It can be one of the legs of the stool, but it's not the only legs of the stool. So we have our sales tax has grown, our income tax has grown. Even with an income tax reduction, our income tax is still growing because our people are making more money. Their salaries are up. So this is going to be an exciting session. Challenging, we've got some big challenges, but we're ready for them.
Okay, well, you talked about some of the challenges in the session. Can you talk about some of those?
Well, probably the biggest one, and we polled our caucus, what do you think is the #1 issue in the session? And a majority of the people said dealing with the infrastructure, not only in the oil patch, but all across the state. I mean, the farm-to-market roads in the north and the east and the southeast are in tough shape. So many wet years, so much traffic from farm-to-market roads, and all that moisture and the big snow removal years we've had have raised Cain with them. Then, of course, you add in the mix of dealing with 150 active oil well drilling rigs each and every day in oil country has created even a special problem out there. So infrastructure is #1. That will take a back seat to nothing during the whole session. But there's also other issues when it comes to, there's water pipeline issues that we need to deal with. There's the Red River Valley diversion that we need to deal with. The protection of Devil's Lake we need to deal with. The proper funding of education we need to deal with. The property tax relief, whether that's extended or not. Whether or not we're going to go along with the reduction of personal income tax that the governor put in his budget. All those are issues, big issues. And then you add in little things like the graduated driver's license. You add in the texting measure. You add in the change in property rights for landowners out in oil country. I mean, there's a multitude of issues that pop to the surface, but we'll deal with each of those as they come in an orderly fashion, and we think it's going to be a good session for the citizens.
Now, the infrastructure problems, you do mention it statewide, and that, again, it's almost we're a victim of our own success, because you have farm-to-market roads. Well, they're getting beat up because we've had good crops the last few years. You've got the infrastructure roads in oil country. Well, you've got a lot of oil rigs drilling there, and the prediction it could go as high as 200 or more. And, you know, this is all happening at the same time. Thankfully, as you said to start the show, there's money to take care of some of these needs.
You know, we have excess revenue, but we've also done some really important things. We've built a good, strong reserve. We've put $320 million in the bank, which, by the way, with the way we're at the rate our government costs to operate, that's only 70 days of government. So it isn't like we have a reserve that'll last us for a year or two. We have $320 million set aside that can only be used as a rainy day fund, and that money will stay there. We have set that in place, so the mechanics are very good for when it would be used, and we're not touching that. We've also set aside money for the property tax relief program. $300 million is sitting there. We lowered our income tax last time, and we still have more revenue for income tax than we had even when you took the $100 million away, because everything is growing. So our revenue stream has been solid. It's very important that you have a multi-legged stool for funding government. You don't want to become too dependent on one area. Fortunately, we've left all the legs of that stool pretty even, and therefore, by watching our spending, and we've done a lot of one-time spending in the last 3 bienniums. We've built a lot of infrastructure. We've fixed buildings that were never fixed that needed to be. We've put more money into roads than we've ever put into roads. So we've spent it when we've had it, and now we have, again, this session, a pretty significant pool of money that we consider to be one-time spending.
Now, I have to ask about the roads because there is no highway bill yet, at least as far as I can tell. How is that going to play into the discussions about infrastructure?
Well, the biggest fight is always, how do you distribute the money? Does it go into the highway fund where all the money goes to the state? Does it go to the state aid distribution fund or the state highway distribution fund where 67% goes to the state, the balance goes to the cities, the counties, the townships? Do you take excise tax, the sales tax on cars, and do you put that in the transportation fund, or do you leave it in the general fund? I mean, those are debates that take place because obviously you need money to get it done. But here's the fly in the ointment. They have, in the last 2 years, they have not authorized a highway bill at the federal level. So we're authorizing, making continued authorizations off of 2008 legislation. For any surety in the highway program, we need to know what the feds are supplying so that we can supply and get our matches in line. And honestly, they've dropped the ball, and this Congress better get a highway bill put together because we're not the only state that needs to fix their highways.
So Congress is going to have to step up to the plate, to use the cliche, and do something.
Absolutely. I mean, they don't even have a budget of their own to work off. All they do is just raise their spending limit and extend it on. And thank God we don't do business that way in North Dakota.
Early on, when we talked about, as the session was starting, you said the reality is that the federal government's broke. And we have to face up to that reality, and there may not be as much federal money coming in. Thankfully, North Dakota is in a good position.
Yeah, and that's, if there's a one word of caution that I would have as a leader, is don't spend all the money. Because when 37 cents of every dollar is borrowed at the federal government level, and when they have to, sooner or later, the reality will come that they're going to have to stop some of this crazy spending. You know where the first place they're going to go? They're going to go to the states, and they're going to say, we're no longer going to fund this program and this program and this program. And we need to make the decision then, if they're really good for our citizens, are we going to keep them, and can we afford to fund them ourselves? So having a reserve is an important thing, because that day is coming. We've already seeing it in Medicaid. We have no idea for sure what the mandate on the federal health care plan as it was passed is going to do to us. We're trying to unravel that on a daily basis. We've even created an interim committee that will meet all year round to monitor what effect that's going to have on us.
Do you think at this point there are too many unanswered questions about the health care?
Well, honestly, I don't like it. I don't like the mandate on our citizens. 70% of North Dakotans, when polled, said they don't want to participate in it. And we are doing everything we can to set ourselves up so that we do not have to participate in that. Are we doing some background things that if it does in fact maintain and start in 2014, we'll be ready? Yes, we will. But we are positioning ourselves to not be involved in that program.
I know not to put too fine a point on it, but Insurance Commissioner Adam Ham has a pile of legislation that he is introducing or has introduced to deal with the contingencies. If these deadlines have to be met, that you'll have something to work with.
And some of those are going to get put on hold because we have a special session coming in November for redistricting, and we have a 5-day session that'll be sometime in early November, and we have added to that bill that sets up the special session the ability for us to discuss what we need to do to react to anything that's happened in the regulations on health care, and we will address some of those. We are not going to add 15 or 20 employees in these various agencies at this point in time. We will deal with that in November if we have to, but again, with us only being there every 80 days, every other year, we have to make sure we monitor this so that we are not stuck being forced into things that we can as a state react to. Most states are reacting in one way or another saying they do not want to participate in this. We're a little behind the 8 ball on that because we weren't in session when it passed. But now we're going to deal with those issues.
I wanted to ask you, back on the infrastructure piece of it, Red River diversion is going to be another big issue. And there seems to be some mixed messages coming from the Corps about whether or not they think, this plan is going to go ahead the way it is. There's some plans to move it closer to between Fargo and West Fargo. There's some objections to upstream cities, and there's some objections from downstream cities. How do you look at that kind of playing itself out?
Well, I think it's a long ways from done. I think that the funny thing is I'm wondering how close they're going to get to Governor Dalrymple's land with the diversion. That ought to make an interesting debate when we have that. But they're going to have a very difficult time taking some of the richest farmland in the world and putting a 600-foot wide ditch on it. Not only that, we honestly can't afford to defend from Wahpeton to Pembina. And the program, the way it's designed today, has a lot of little things in it about protecting those that are affected both sides of these cities that are diverting this water. So it's a long ways from done, and it is a very expensive ordeal. As a legislature, our plan will be to set a little bit of money aside each biennium for the next 4 or 5 bienniums so that we are capable of having set aside our share of what will be that diversion. But we need to see what's happening first before we go too fast.
It's a $1.2 billion project,
minimum.
I guess, minimum at this point. So.
And it's very expensive. Is it necessary? If you want continued growth in the valley, you've got to do something. I mean, we're sitting with as much snow as we had in 96, 97 right now. And in fact, a few more inches than we had in the big year, 96, 97, when that was really hard. That was the toughest one on Fargo. Are we better prepared? Yes, we are. Should we continue preparing to defend certain parts of the city internally with dikes? Yes, because it's 10, 12 years before this dike's ever going to happen, this diversion.
Speaking of water, of course, we mentioned Devil's Lake at the outset. There was, of course, one of the hearings happened this week about an East End outlet. And there's legislative intent, I guess, intent language to construct some kind of facility on the Tolna-Coulee to help
control
prevent.
Dam is what they're talking.
Control dam.
Yep. And they had $120 million, and the governor had $120 million in his budget for that. Again, it's unbelievable. I mean, water's not that far from Candu today. Who would have ever thought it? That lake would expand to that level, that these draws and ravines would be holding water from Devil's Lake Basin all the way up there. So we need to address that. It does create some special problems downstream. The quality of the water is not what a lot of us downstream would like to get, because it's harder with the saline content being quite high. It's hard for us to run it through our filtration plants to make it good drinking water. But in Valley City, it's going to have a special problem. I mean, that Cheyenne River is going to be pretty full.
There was
so we've got that by no, again, that's another one that isn't completely settled.
Yeah, there was some startling statistics about that if the Tolna-Coulee, if breaks free and starts flowing naturally, that could be about 2.5 times the flood that Valley City had a couple of years ago.
Well, it would basically devastate, from what I understand, Valley City if that much water came. Because if it breaks out, it's going to come with a lot of water. That's why we need to be very careful to look at that control dam so that we have some say in how that water's coming out of there. And again, they have record moisture up in the basin this fall and winter. We just have to make some attempt to deal with that this session.
Our guest today on Legislative Review is Representative Al Carlson. He's the House Majority Leader. We have a special feature we're going to start on this season of Legislative Review. We're calling it Cafe Perspectives. Matt Olien went to the Governor's Inn in Castleton to talk to some people about some of the issues on their mind.
Thanks, Dave. I'm here at the Table of Knowledge, as it's called, here at the Governor's Inn in Castleton, just off I-94, with a group of gentlemen that are here virtually every morning talking about the weather, politics, anything. And Jack Dalrymple, of course, Castleton native, gave his State of the State address here recently. And how many of you guys saw it or heard it or read about it, and some reactions to Governor Dalrymple?
I think he had a good formula for the future. I think he'll be a great governor.
He's strictly behind education. You see that is pushed forward. I think one of the things he was talking about is spending some money out in the oil fields on the roads and the infrastructures, which every road in North Dakota needs.
He has some very good proposals, and but now you need the legislature to go along on most of them, or at least part way on them. The money is there, Of course, every agency in the state, every group in the state is going to be in with both feet trying to get money.
And speaking of Castleton, guys, what's in the water here? Governor Guy, Governor Sinner, Dalrymple, Langer, Burke. I mean, that's amazing for a town of 2,000 people. What do you guys attribute it to?
Luck, I guess. I don't think it's the water.
I don't think so.
What do you guys think of the oil situation? Boy, things are going great guns out there, but as with any kind of growth, there's problems. Roads, infrastructure, not enough housing for people. How do you think the legislature should manage this oil boom?
I think we should have put in everything that they need out there, because this is our jackpot now. And I think we should work it and give them everything they need.
Didn't they say yesterday that there's double the oil out there than they thought at first?
Yeah.
So that'd be going to be tremendous for our general fund in North Dakota. And they're going to have to spend some money to
Absolutely.
so that it keeps advancing.
I think I heard that there's going to be the second behind Texas. We're going to be right behind Texas on the oil production.
You know, there's a fine line between development for the oil boom, and then if something happens to the oil, the development, these people that are working there, they just take off. And who's left with the assessments? With the taxpayers of North Dakota. And it happened to Belfield back in whatever year that was.
See, Williston has gone through 2 booms and busts, and oil workers disappeared and they sat with excessive housing.
Well, gentlemen, the legislature is going to be wrestling with these and a lot of other issues. We'll come back in about a month and visit with you guys again, okay? Okay. And in 2 weeks, Dave, we'll be at the Ohms Cafe in Mandan to visit with a similar bunch of gentlemen. Back to you, Dave.
Thanks, Matt. Next time we have this, Matt will be in the Ohms Cafe in Mandan to talk to some of their perspectives too. Our guest, Al Carlson, the House Majority Leader. And I wanted to just switch the discussion we're having to property tax. Last year, you passed a $300+ million property tax relief bill, which basically funneled a lot of money toward local schools to bring them up to state paying 70%. And now it's going to cost another, what, $45 million to continue this year? Is that,
Yeah, the property tax, and we funded that for 4-year time frame at the last biennium. We took money out of the Permanent Oil Trust Fund, funded it for 4 years, but it's a growing thing to maintain because property values have increased. Therefore, that 70% level, and in order for us to get to the 75 mil reduction, we have to add $45 more million. There's lots of discussion what to do with that. There's some that want to cap it and say that's all the money we're putting into property tax. Some want to put it in. If this is going to be a $500 million expense to the state in a very few years, because of the growth of our assessed value in our properties to maintain the premise that they used when they started. This is a very difficult decision for the legislature to make, is how deep and how long do we want to continue? Because if we back out right now, there's going to be a lot of people paying a lot more property tax. We put $300 million into the hands of the taxpayers. Most of us like putting the money in the hands of the taxpayers compared to the government. We put $100 million into there on income tax. Can we continue to do that? The projections look pretty good, but it doesn't allow for many more reductions on any other types of taxes if you're going to do that. And there's a group of people in our caucus and in our assembly that think maybe we should switch our focus to getting out of the property tax business and to lower our corporate and personal income tax to our citizens and get out of a tax that we don't collect or assess.
Is that something you'd like to see happen?
Well, I think that it's a long-range problem for us to be in a situation where we don't control the assessment or the collection of the taxes, but yet we're rebating to that area. And our 17% reduction that we thought we were getting has already eroded down in most counties to 13 or 14% because the other political subdivisions have increased their values, assessments, and their mill levies. So we're not getting as much the bang for the buck, and that, Dave, leads to people talking about caps and caps on valuation, caps on spending, referring of all budgets so that they can't be passed by political subdivisions without the vote of the people. I mean, there's some interesting bills out there, and one thing they all do is they put a real clamp on local control, And a lot of us really struggle with that issue because we believe that the best government is the one closest to the people.
So this could be kind of a hidden issue that might be coming up.
There
throughout the
are
session.
numerous bills in our House Finance and Tax Committee. I know there's some in the Senate as well. It's going to be a hot button issue before it's all done.
I wanted to also ask you about your relations with the new governor, Governor Dalrymple, because he's a former legislator.
Yep.
Unlike his two predecessors, he actually served time in the legislature, and you said you served time with him in 4 legislative
Yep,
sessions.
I served 4 sessions with Jack. He has, I think, a unique perspective. He's had to go down and deal with the governor to balance the budget. We understand it's his responsibility to propose. It's our responsibility to analyze and dispose of the budget. A very simple analogy is the governor might have the checkbook, but the legislature has all the deposit slips. And it's our responsibility to balance the budget and to make sure the revenues match. He has a good perspective. I think he'll do a good job.
I was going to say he probably has a unique understanding of that.
Well, he's seen
because
both sides, and because of that, I think he understands what we have to do down the hall better than any other governor we've had.
Yeah, and he actually chaired appropriations, I think, 2 sessions.
Yeah,
I
yeah, I'm just
correctly.
keep reminding him of the comments he'd make to us when we were down there.
Oh, yes, I understand.
So we remind him of the things he said, and he said, obviously, must not have said those.
Oh, okay. An issue that you brought up this week is you've introduced a bill, and 2 other legislators introduced a bill concerning the Fighting Sioux nickname. Your bill, if I remember correctly, says UND cannot change this. Is that correct?
It says the Board of Higher Ed nor the school can change the name of the Fighting Sioux.
Why did you decide to do that?
Well, I thought it was, number one, if I thought it was one bit derogatory towards our Native American population, I'd have never done it. I think it's an honorary name. It's a historic name for North Dakota. I'm kind of a history guy. And that name it carries a lot of history for a lot of people who went to that school. I thought it was poorly handled. Not only in the way they dealt with the NCAA, but the way the votes were handled. We're finding that a majority of North Dakotans want to keep the name. And you know what? Up at Spirit Lake, one of the bills was introduced for a member of the Spirit Lake tribe because they said we had 70% in favor. We want to keep it. So it isn't just a bunch of legislators saying let's stir up the pot. We believe that that is a good, proud name. It's a name everybody associates with that institution. I think it was poorly handled by the Board of Higher Ed, and I think it should be, it deserves its hearing. The Attorney General's created a couple bumps in the road, but you know what? Everything we pass is considered constitutional until someone says it isn't. Now, if we have to turn this into a constitutional measure in the end and make it part of the Constitution that's the name, that may be what we do.
And at the end of your bill, it says if the NCAA comes down on the state of North Dakota, then the Attorney General should seriously look at an antitrust lawsuit.
Absolutely, and there's other states that have done that. Why have they made exceptions for the Florida Seminoles and the Fighting Illini? And I can list you many other schools that have been given exceptions, but yet the state of North Dakota, with a very proud name and a non-derogatory name, was not. I think it was poorly handled. I think they should have been challenged more. And you know what? I've had 200 emails, and about 190 of those 200 have been very positive. There are people who have very strong feelings about the name of the school. I'm a Bison. I went to NDSU. My motivation was not to make extra work for the legislature. My motivation was to properly to stand up and say, we believe this is the name that should be used, and the process was not done right.
We only have a couple of minutes left. I hate to bring up the subject because we could talk for probably hours about it. Higher education asking for a fairly significant budget increase. Just thumbnail right now, what will happen to it?
Well, right now we've got the Higher Education Committee. The budget's in the House. Our guys are digging into it right now. Next week, a campus at a time is coming in. They don't like just having one budget from an overview office come in and tell. They want to talk to those campuses and see what their needs are. The governor even said it was time to look at a different method of funding of higher education, and we agree with that. Stay tuned next week. There's going to be a couple of very interesting bills that come through that deal with some revamping of how we fund and how we deal with higher education.
Something along the line of what he said, a higher education funding commission?
No, it'll be a little different than that.
Oh,
Goes a little farther than that.
Okay.
The legislative involvement is important. You know, we were told by the Attorney General that the higher ed can do whatever they want. Well, it's pretty hard without us funding them for them to do anything. And it's a cooperation, it's a partnership. And so far, we feel that it's not been quite the way we want it to be, and we want more involvement in the process. We don't want to micromanage. That's not our intent. But we need to have a very responsive, a very accountable higher education system that trains the workforce of the people that we need in the jobs that are available in our state. And that's what we're going to push for.
Okay. And with that, we've run into the end of the half hour.
Very good. Thanks for having me in.
Thank you very much. Our guest on Legislative Review, Representative Al Carlson of Fargo, the House Majority Leader. For Legislative Review on Prairie Public, I'm Dave Thompson.